Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Participant? Um, I can see people joining, so I'm just gonna start talking. Hi, everyone. We have a truly amazing guest for you today. Aidan Sugano was a production designer on NIMONA for Netflix, as I'm sure you all know. He's gonna give a short presentation, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Type your questions in the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll read them out loud after. So yeah, um, I think is everyone here? Sorry, I can't tell if it shows like the participant number going up, but I can't tell if everyone can actually hear us. So can someone like type in the chat just to confirm? Okay, yeah. Okay, great. Thank you
All of a
all.
sudden just flooding in all at once. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi
Oh my
everyone.
gosh, we have a great turnout today. So yeah, we're gonna do a quick presentation and then open up for Q&A. So yeah, Aiden, you can share your screen.
Oh sure, yeah. All right, let's hi. Yeah, I mean hopefully I don't ramble too
Um,
much, but can you hear me?
yep, I can hear you.
Oh good,
Uh,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, hopefully I don't ramble too much, but I thought, today I'd run you through a little bit of kind of just the general thinking behind what we did on Nimona, and then I will stop rambling. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer them as best as I can. Yeah, I mean, so Nimona has been this big, crazy, and insane journey. But for us on the visual side, um, everything we did in the film was designed to reinforce this kind of the theme and the spirit of the Nimona, the character, because we very much wanted to stay true to Nate's comic and the thing that we fell so in love with. That's, I mean, honestly, I think this is the reason why so many people have fought so hard for this film to be made, is just so much of us have seen ourselves in this and connected to the material. Um, and so, yeah, it became this very daunting challenge to make sure that all of us did as right by Nate's comic. And pretty quickly, we figured out that, among all of the things that this project needed to be, we knew that we needed to tie it to the theme that existed beyond everything. And, that theme spoke to acceptance and it spoke to expectation and the bias that kind of exists and, seeing someone for who they are and not who we think they are. And that kind of filtered into literally every design choice we made. So, it filtered into the overall look, but it also filtered into trying to figure out, what those expectations were that we were trying to play against, um, and then how we wanted to, change them in the spirit of Nimona and just destroy them and use this as this testament to this character. So, uh, in order to do that, we first kind of looked to what those conventions were, and so we looked to the golden age of animation, and we looked to Charlie Harper and Ivan Earl, and those kind of set the stage for our base language for everything, so that then we could turn it on its head and we could flip the expectations on their heads. And so, since we also knew we had to do this really, really hyper stylized look, and we wanted to lean really hard into it because even the look itself reinforced the theme, we had to break everything down to the core idea, which again reinforces theme, which was trying to reduce everything to the simplest expression, the clearest expression of what that is. So it filtered into everything and filtered into how we simplified our forms and how we, modeled our characters, how we made planes so that the lighting would work, how we approached our materials. It was everything to an insanely granular degree. And at the same time, we also knew that in regards to the overall language of this whole film, there were these two dichotomies that existed. There was the language of the institute and the ideals that were tied to that, and then there was the opposite, which was Nimona and the the fluidity and the um, well, acceptance at this point, but like chaos and individuality that kind of flowed through her. And so we also quickly identified that there were two languages that we needed to influence and place into literally um, everything as well. It was a lot of overthinking and getting really granular into every single decision. And so this kind of drove our approach to everything. It drove our approach to characters. It drove our approach to how we stylize the shapes inside characters' eyes. What specific shapes we use in lens flares and all of this. And we also knew that we were given the task of expressing this medieval world and how to translate that in a way that felt like it wasn't a caricature of the world of a theme park, which I think is what we all can easily go to, but could feel grounded in reality to reinforce the story that was being told. And so, making sure that both from a trope standpoint and from a grounded standpoint, that idea of medieval future expressed itself in everything. So our character's armor got a pass of, modernization on it, how we approached our world, um, down to figuring out what silhouette for a hoodie would be if we were basing it off of a traditional medieval shape. Um, and like I was saying, everything kind of was grounded with our characters first. So, Nimona was built all entirely out of these flame shapes and these, fluid rhythms to reinforce her character. Ballister, because of his personality and the change that we needed to have, existed in this very grounded square world. Golden Loin, was all about the sword and the kind of triangle that's balanced on his point to reflect the character journey that he had to go on in regards to the expectation that was going to be laid upon him. And then the director was all arches because she was the one who needed to represent very clearly the ideals of the Institute and all of the ideology that was tied to that. Um, and so this, again, we kind of put this into a literally every decision. So even in how we treated our um, approach to distance. So as characters got farther away, we wanted to express this idea where the closer up to something is where you started to know it and see it for what it truly is. And the farther it got away from you, the more that it became the icon and the idea and the almost the expectation of what it is. And not only did this beautifully illustrate our theme, but it also helped kind of maintain the overall visual aesthetic that we were approaching to make sure that everything felt like it was painted and handled in the same kind of consistent hand and realistically the same brush. Um, and so this affected how we approached our, entire crowd. We had to build a whole world around these characters that our characters could seamlessly blend into them. And this was a place too that even in the beginning we knew we wanted to make sure that it represented and reinforced and mirrored our world. So we did a lot of research in regards to figuring out how this kind of culture would have evolved into this space, what kind of socioeconomic structures would be in place and have evolved into this, so that our characters didn't stand out so much against these characters, but they felt like they were a part of this world and, could blend in because that was another huge important thing. And that we had the diversity that we were aiming for when week two of this project, to make this world feel like it could continue on without our characters in it. Um, and so that went into how we treated patterns for each different class. We had our nobility class that leaned into specific visual rules. Our citizens, were broader to represent the modernization of this. So there was athleisure wear, and there was, graphics and screen prints and different, materials. We found out that based on our reference, the medieval cities had a group of, you had your nobility, your citizens, and the non-citizens. And so this was also a way to kind of showcase the evolution of this culture, but through the lens of something that could sit in the background and be felt and not seen. Um, and, in talking to that world again, we very much wanted to make sure that, again, this is a place that was people have lived and died in for generations, and it felt like a real grounded place because it needed to mirror our world. So, we had to make sure that with every choice, and this is where we got kind of way too nerdy, and we had pages and pages and pages of us being like, oh, well, if this was a cloistered situation society, then this is how it would have evolved if within these walls from these very specific things. And so we got very kind of granular in that. But above all, we needed to make sure that we could showcase time because that had such an important statement to be made for the theme and the traditions that we all, even in this, in our current world, especially in our current world, have to live with and deal with, which again speaks to the theme of this film. So how we approach architecture, how we translated the medieval so it didn't feel like a theme park or a caricature, but it could feel like it was grounded within the natural evolution of this kind of a place. What would the colors be in this space? How would we handle the difference of materials and the evolution of this? So castles made out of glass and skyscrapers that were based on wattle and daub houses and half timber houses and making sure that at the same time, because of the culture of this place, it and how much in our research, how much in these kind of societies, technology would advance and culture would be stagnated, which is why you would have, you know, things like medieval swords and the social strata still in place, but at the same time you would have flying cars and you would have impossibly tall skyscrapers, um, and at the same time showcase the wide stretch of socioeconomic and status that would exist in this country or in this kingdom. Sorry, excuse me. Um, and at the same time, we needed to figure out how to showcase in a felt but not seen way the culture of this world because so much of that spoke to the establishment of these tropes that we were setting up in this film. So breaking it down into how would this affect pop culture versus, institutional art versus, the kingdom-based propaganda, any of those things that would need to exist in this world to make it feel grounded, but also fall into the background and have enough range so that our characters would not, this would not distract from our characters. So, it would show itself, it showed itself in, subway ads and normal propaganda art that you would see that is glorifying the ideas of the hero of killing monsters is the glorious thing, and the Institute is the protector, and monsters are to be feared. Um, and this would also express itself in the pop culture. And so these, we built ads and we built um, uh, all of the elements that would exist within this, food and restaurants and all this to speak to this very, very isolated and cloistered society. Uh, and, then we had to figure out not only that, but how this place would look on top of all of this. We knew we wanted to speak to those traditions and making sure that that existed in everything designed. So how we designed a blade of grass to the clouds in our skies, to maintain that consistency and ground ourselves, but still have the range and the versatility to give us the emotionality that we needed. Um, this also, to reinforce that metaphor through every choice, like our background characters, it approached how we handled the materials on our characters. And very quickly, we realized that in order to create this very 2D look, we had to kind of lean into, the a holistic approach because we knew that this wasn't a filter that could be applied on top of everything. It was something that had to be built in from the ground. And so we utilized, we did things like utilize the natural filtering of your eye to simplify out detail as it receded. We, did that approach to hair, and we did that approach to metal, to make sure that there could be this very consistent hand that, again, wouldn't distract your brain and would ground itself, but would maintain the style consistency of that 2D look that we needed to play off of. Um, and for the kind of biggest thing that we did to reinforce our theme was our cinematography. And in our film, we specifically designed every single light and visual composition to reinforce this idea that light was representative of the character's relationship with acceptance at that time. So we could use light to showcase, if they were on the threshold of acceptance or if they're being pushed into the shadows. And conversely, or sorry, shadow, I meant shadow was what we used. And light was we used for acceptance and, making sure that those were the moments where our characters could step into that acceptance and also, yeah, conversely, that exposure. And so with that, we designed everything to reinforce this, even down to our character of Nimona, who on her journey, and this is kind of the most extreme expression of our theme, um, she becomes a creature of shadow when she reaches her lowest point where she is given up on the possibility of acceptance and becomes a literal creature of shadow, um, who is, who literally in the metaphor consumes light and cannot be affected by it, until she's finally seen by Ballister and then becomes the opposite. She becomes a creature of light. She becomes a creature of acceptance and becomes a literal sun that kind of turns night into day. And at the same time, we used the Nimona color to reinforce that idea of every time you would see Nimona pink, it was specifically tied to the idea of Nimona herself being at her most comfortable in sharing herself. Um, and we also knew that based on our hyper stylized look, we wanted to make sure that this was grounded in very naturalistic and subtle, almost live action lighting techniques. Um, at the same time, like I was saying, we designed everything so granularly, and one of the things that we designed was to reinforce this again. We designed each of the eye dings in their eyes. They related to who had power in the scene. So if you go back and watch this, if every scene, if you look at who the character that had power, so for example, Ballister, when he's locked up in jail and the director is giving her speech, everything's diamonds because that character, that ideology is the one that has control in that situation. And at the end, when Ballister is pulling down the and opening light back into the hideout space, um, everything is the Nimona flame shape. Even if I go back a little bit, the things, oops, it's not in here. I forgot it. Sorry, everyone. Uh, but oh, you can see a little bit of actually the diamonds in the up top. But so we use this idea to reinforce the metaphor in such, a simple way by replacing the idea of light with acceptance. So our characters could be surrounded by light or acceptance. They could be excluded from it. We could do things like keep them literally trapped by it, even though the prison door is open. He still has the prison bars cast upon him because he is burdened by the expectation and the assumptions and of what is upon him at that moment. And we could also, and so we designed this into literally every sequence of the film. and made sure that our progressions were consistent across to make sure that we could subtly reinforce the journey that our characters went on without having it distract um, all the way down to the end. And I think the this in a lot of ways has been the most kind of oh, sorry, the most collaborative experience I've ever had in my career because of how much we had to lean on all of the experts around us to kind of build this thing together, and like it would not have come together without all of the kind of the blood and the sweat and the tears that everyone had poured into this thing to make it the best thing that it could be because of how much everyone connected to it. Um, and for me, it was just I'm very lucky that I got to be on this show. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of my presentation.
That was so awesome. Thank you for showing us all that amazing art. Yeah,
I hope I
so
wasn't rambling too much.
no, you're amazing. And it's just such a treat to see all like the development art and your thoughts as well. I guess we'll open it up for Q&A now. We already have two submissions, but if anyone else has any questions, I also wrote down some questions as well. So please, everyone, go ahead and send your submissions in the Q&A box, and I'll read them out loud. Um, okay, let's see. Oh, we already have two submissions. First one says, Nimona was in development for a while and it came out amazing. Can you tell us about the moment or show us a keyframe where there was a 2D slash 3D hybrid, I guess like a shot where it said like booyah on the screen or something? Um, and this, the
Oh, like the
question asker
moment that
said,
we got it kind of thing. The moment we were like, oh shit,
yeah,
that's the look.
yeah, I guess so. Or if you have any like content related to like the 2D to 3D like keyframes or
Yeah, I
um,
mean like so the if you are and let me ask a question because there's so many like there's the 2D elements in the film that's like because we do have some of those, and then there's the kind of overall 2D look, I guess, which it was its own kind of separate thing, which honestly, in regards to the look of the picture, that was started, way back in 2016 when we first started this project. From kind of day one, because of the original director who was coming on, Patrick Osborne, he wanted very much to lean into this very hyper stylized piece. Um, because of experience and also because of the theme of this film. And so that was kind of like from day one there was some early exploration. Oh, the Eureka moment. Yes. Uh, I'll show you the Eureka moment. So there was a early test that was done. Um, I'm sorry, I'm frantically trying to open this right now. There was an early test that was done on the director that kind of showcased a painting taken to life that kind of blew all of our minds. And there's a lot of stuff that you're seeing right now. This one, where this was kind of, Jeff had done a painting, or Jeff Turley had done a painting early on that was uh, that back at Blue Sky before the all of the crazy turmoil um, was kind of matched exactly and with a lot of hard work. But this was one of those early ones where as soon as we saw this, it absolutely blew our minds, and we were like, "Holy shit, that was it!" But there was so many along the way where it's like the metal test that I showed with Goldenloin. This one was a early one that we had done. We had done a shark test where she was dancing. So like the look was, and this, some of these were way back in like 2016, 2017. Um, so this was very much in dev from day one, and like Eureka moment was, I mean, it was like every other day was a Eureka moment. It was a lot on this one.
That's so awesome. Thank you for showing us that. Let's see. Next question. Um, Next question asker is wondering there was something happened with Nimona's like ankle design or something like that. Was that the thing? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah.
what?
So I should bring up that drawing too. Yeah. So there was, I mean, one of the this film has had a long journey, and it's gone through many different iterations, and it's also realistically, it's when it was started, the world was in a very, very different place. I mean, even still, the world is in a different place now, but like the conversations that we had when they were started about like maintaining the body type of Nimona that was so important to all of us, especially Nate, what was it was pushback. We got pushback for it. You know, she was too thick, she was too chubby. How is this aspirational? And all of us from the ground were screaming that, no, 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 we have to do it. This is exactly. And so part of it related to when you work in a studio with a big studio culture and have to answer to executives, you make concessions. But this was one where definitely we knew that we couldn't make concessions on this one. This film wouldn't be the film it is today if we had rolled over. And I mean, they tried to kill it so many times. Sorry. Uh, but yeah, like again, this kind of goes to the testament of the fact that this movie is still around is due to everyone who fought so hard to make sure that this would not go fall by the wayside or be compromised. And I'm trying desperately in the background to find that drawing. But yeah, does that answer the question a little bit? I'll find
Yeah,
it by the end of this, I promise.
it's okay. Yeah,
Oh, here
yeah.
we go.
Think that totally answers it. And I just want to say, as a huge fan of Nimona, thank you for fighting to make the film that it is. So yeah.
I
Um,
have done a tiny part of this, but I will say this is the kind of thing, what I'm going to show you is this is the kind of thing that at some point when you're I mean, character design is really fucking hard, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes you're drawing something and you're just like, oh shit, and it's not coming. And Nimona was one of those characters who very quickly kind of started designing herself, and everything became very, very easy. And so this was, when we had any hurdles like this was the kind of the stuff that happened where Nimona was honestly the one that decided for herself what the fuck she wanted to be and wouldn't let this stuff thing. So I think this is the drawing that you're talking about Nimona's ankles and her body type, which, yes, was a fight.
oh, that drawing's so awesome. Yeah, thank you for showing us that. Uh, Sorry, we got a lot of submissions. I'll just try to do like a lightning round. Next one is how does one become a production designer?
Uh, luck and hard work, and no, I, I think I think it was a lot of luck, right? Like I worked many different things. I started as a color artist, and I did a little bit of character design and set design, and um, over the course of even Nimona, I kind of went from a designer into an art director, and then in my case, when after the closure, I had to step in and take over from Jeff um, to continue this on. But I mean, it's hard and it's weird. It's a weird job because it's also like you, in a lot of ways, your job is to play support. Like it's your job to help set the visual and all that, but it's also your job to help support everyone, the team and the artists, and make sure that you are kind of facilitating how this thing works. Sorry, keep going. That was a bad long answer for
Oh,
your
no.
lightning round, Claudia. Sorry.
No, that was great. No, sorry, no, answer however in depth you want. Next one is how did you handle shapeshifting in the design process, like Nimona's shapeshifting?
Yeah, so that was a cool one. The Because we knew we had to stay true to the spirit of Nimona and this character. Um, Shape shifting is her identity. It is pivotal to her identity, and so it is the kind of and Nate, I was in a panel with Nate this weekend, and he said it so beautifully, where it's like it is the moment where you see the true Nimona is the moment that she's in the process of shape shifting. And so, because of that, we had the insanely hard challenge to try to design all of these different forms because they're all Nimona. And we kind of planted our flag in because of this character and because of her personality, the shapeshifts became the kind of emotional the most kind of extreme emotional example of each of those. So there's a reason why the gorilla looks like it does because that is, in the emotion that's tied to that design. There's a reason why the shark looks like the way it does. There's a reason why the cat is a cat. And so that was kind of the thing that guided our hand in designing all of those.
Awesome. Thank you. I guess we kind of answered this next one a little bit. It says, at one moment, did you finally feel like you nailed the visual language for the film?
uh when we sent it off to Netflix to put it on the on their streaming service. No, I mean I think like it's weird because you feel like you are never done. There's always something to fix, but this is one where pretty early on, once we knew the goal, I think everyone knew the direction it was going with, and that was where again it was such this crazy holistic collaborative experience because so many people brought all of these bits of expertise to the table to make sure that this thing stayed true. Um, that like I don't think there was one moment where we said, "Oh, they had it," but it was kind of like from day one, every step of the way was another step toward we had it, we had it, we had it. And even like when on our journey through, which versions we were doing, because sometimes we added a little bit more 3D, sometimes we went flatter, like, and it kind of went through this journey. It always stayed true to the source. I mean, if you look at some of the original tests and you look at the version that it's now, it's, you know, they are they're very much aligned even 7 years later.
Yeah. Next question is, communication probably plays an important role in keeping the style consistent. What are some challenges regarding that, and how did you guys overcome it?
Yeah, that's a awesome question. So it was, I mean, the simplest one was early and often is we knew, and the background characters were a good example. Like we knew that we had such a huge task on our hands that the only way to do this was to start talking and be very open about what the complications were, what the challenges were, and find ways to come to the best results. So, and then when this started back at Blue Sky, all of us had worked together for years, and so the communication side of things was very easy, um, or easier. It was never easy because you're trying to build these lofty ideas and find words to communicate them and then also drawing them out, but then it's needs to move and all of that. um, but then when you add on to um, the onto it the complication of as soon as the closure happened, our arena became global, we were working with artists in Mumbai, and we were working with artists in Berlin or in Belgium, and we were working with London and Montreal, and artists. There was an artist in New Zealand, there was an artist in Vancouver, and so it was this huge global thing, and it was very much a challenge to make sure that we were all speaking the same language in regards to when we mean this line weight, we mean the same thing. But it was so incredible how so quickly everyone got it, and it wasn't like we had said we have to do it this way. It was this beautiful open collaboration where it's like this is the goal, and then people would bring in their A game. And so like communication is always hard, but it was definitely one of those ones where because everyone cared so much about this, there was always that level of kind of openness and just determination that existed.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know there were like it was so global, like the crew on the show. That's
Yeah, it was
awesome.
awesome. It was amazing because like as soon like obviously I have my family and friends at Blue Sky, and that was a heartbreaking experience, but it was definitely also amazing to be able to work with the best talent in the world, where it's just like some lighter in Mumbai was just showed you a shot and you were like, oh my God, that's insane. That's the most insane thing I've ever seen. So it's like it was incredible. That was awesome.
What do you think are the strengths of portraying deep themes such as exclusion and acceptance through the medium of animation?
I mean, personally, for me, and this is a challenging one, but like with film, I think for a long time animation was the place where you could do anything if you as long as you could draw it. And then live action technology got up to a point where they could literally make anything come to life. And now I think we've reached this great space where finally animation has become what animation always truly was, which is if live action is prose, then animation is poetry. It's visual poetry, which means that you can communicate these intense emotional metaphors, visual metaphors, through art. And that is, I think that's where these very big themes, these very kind of universal themes, are perfectly displayed through animation, because that is literally the most emotional space where you have the ability to control every decision that you possibly can think of to reinforce that visual metaphor, and express itself in the best possible way. So I mean also that's the my art hat putting on, but also like personally, I know this is true for a lot of people from the experience of hearing all of this, but like these big, lofty themes are ones that are universal to everyone for many different reasons. There's a reason why so many people connect to NIMONA, and it's not just because, we are proudly super LGBTQ plus, and, also but this is for everyone who's fucking felt like an other, and this is where I've connected to it because, like, and since we're Asians, and we're in the Asians in animation space, like. I grew up in a small town and I was one of, two Japanese kids in the entire town. And like, this is a space where, so much of this film was, and so much the original comic that Nate created, I connected to because, yeah, I felt exactly the same way that Ballisters had and Nimona has. And I think that's true for a lot of us. And that's where I think animation is such a perfect medium to explore these ideas. I hope that was okay.
No, that was awesome. It was a beautiful answer. Uh, yeah, thank you. We touched on this next one a little bit also, but question asker is wondering what was it like on the production side when Blue Sky closed its doors? Was there still work being done up until that point?
Yeah, and after. I mean, this was definitely one of those experiences uh, where because of how much so many of us had poured into this, like it was absolutely heartbreaking to know that there was a chance that this thing was dead forever. I mean, like I started on this project in 2016, and I was one of the first concept artists to touch it at Blue Sky. And when it closed, after we had gone through so many different things, it felt like a loss. You know, so many of us felt like we were in grief, and uh, it was kind of it was absolutely insane how inspiring. As soon as we found out there was a chance, and it happened so many times where we found it there was a chance that they would be picked up, and then that fell through again. And then there was another chance that it was going to be picked up, and that fell through again. But like at everyone at the same time, even though none of us had jobs, we were still trying to do anything we could to keep this thing going. And so like there was a time where none of us had jobs and we were spending hours of our own time trying to pull data from there because we had found out that holy shit, this film was actually going to be made, and we can take all of the work that we can with us and give it to the next studio to continue. And so people were throwing in like hundreds of hours of their time to pull training videos and rip Mayas off of servers, and it was hilarious. We were we armloads of hard drives that was just like filled with the work that we had cared about so much, and then so many people dedicated their time to helping in any way they could to set this thing up for the future, and even to this day, where it's like even the people who did not get to come with us and do this, because that was the other heartbreaking piece of this, they still gave so much of their time to do anything for this because of how much everyone cared about it, which was a crazy experience.
Yeah, that sounds like there were a lot of ups and downs there, but I'm glad it turned out for the better. Next question, I'm also wondering the answer, but what was your absolute favorite part of the project that you worked on?
I mean, that is a challenging one because
Yeah.
there was there was a lot. Um, I mean, it's is I think that's one of those questions that'll just kind of open up and keep going. But like, when we were deving the background characters, that was insanely inspiring because we were trying to figure out this brand new tool that you know, we wanted to set this insanely lofty goal, and then and made this insanely complex system that then spit out 26 million unique variations on the first try. And like, when we first started working with the, look deving the metal, and when we and ho the horses, right? And how to do fur on the horses that didn't feel like it was painted on, or how when we first started lighting it for real, and we realized that this thing was actually going to be a thing. Um, you know, it was kind of every moment, and there were small ones like some things where we had to figure out how capes moved, because how you want to design a cape. And so we brought in a bunch of capes and ran around the studio for a while this was back pre-COVID, but like um, there was 7 years of crazy memories, I think is the easiest way of putting that, and favorite parts. And yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Um, sorry guys, we're getting a bit low on time, so I think I'm gonna try and ask questions that we haven't touched on at all yet. Like, let's see, about how does one stay motivated with the same fervor for many years while working on the same project?
It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. I'm sure, as a lot of you know. Uh, I mean, I would say this was one of those projects that um, it was not hard to stay motivated on because of a lot of things that we talked about. Um, this was a unique experience for sure. And then because of all of the emotional turmoil that came with it, I think there was, and this is turning into a therapy session, so sorry for everyone
No,
watching. But yeah, because of that, like this one was never one where we had to actually ask ourselves how to stay inspired. It was more the other way of like, we probably should stop working. We're doing a little bit too much. We can probably chill for a little bit, but I mean, that's I think the other simple answer of that that's not NIMONA related is um, experiencing other stuff, stepping away, finding inspiration in other places. Like, because I find for me personally at least that like all of those things that you run into outside and in your life is something that just kind of fuels the fire, which is like you're walking down the street and again, this is a dumb pneumonia related thing, but it's easy since we're talking a little bit about pneumonia in here. But like, we had to learn that Charlie Harper does a lot of tangents and uses tangents in a very specific way that was really cool. And then you're walking down the street and you're like, shit, those mountains are tangenting in a Charlie Harper style. Damn it, I'm never gonna not see that stuff ever again. Um, uh, so yeah, but like I, doing stuff, that is a lame answer, but doing stuff I think is the
no, that was a great answer. Thank you. How about what is one thing that you wish you knew earlier in your career?
that's a good question too. I think if I was to, yeah, think back, I think the more and more time I spend in here is that more than anything is the thinking is the most important thing. There's the drawing and the painting and the technical aspect behind it, but thinking is hard. And it's a challenge for me, especially like every day to try to figure out a reason behind every decision that I do when I do my job. But I think that would be something that if someone had me focus more on that, that would have helped me get you know, to a better place quicker, right? Or at least have kind of much more, depth to how I do things. Um, that took a while to get there.
Um, how about kind of touched on this one. Oh, here's kind of a fun question. What was the decision behind changing L Lion Lionheart's
Oh,
hair?
golden
Oh, do you
line?
mean Golden
Yeah,
Lion?
yeah. Uh, yeah, so I mean, it actually goes beyond that. So it was originally in the comic, like Golden Loin was white, and this was definitely one of those places where, when this project started, we were definitely in that era still where no one was questioning why in fantasy worlds characters couldn't be other races. It was still back in that era, and so when Nick and Troy came on, one of the questions that they asked, and one that a lot of us on the team really jumped on, was, making sure that this was a colorblind world, because this was a priority for us since the beginning, but especially with our leads, this was a space where we wanted to push because we still had Goldenloin as a white guy. And, I'm half white, I'm half Japanese. And so I'm not going to lie that I very selfishly pitched Golden Loin as an Asian guy because at that point too, like there weren't any good examples of Asians in a role that were like Golden Loin, where it was an aspirational, heroic, champion of the realm kind of thing. We were still in sidekick era. And so this was definitely a space where so many of us were very passionate about pushing for this, making Ballister South Asian and, wanting to make sure that we planted that flag. And so uh, serendipitously, when I suggested that Golden Line Be Asian, um, we also kind of put together some examples of like, oh, here's some of the design that or the reference that I was building off of, and one of them was Eugene. The one that we were focusing on was Eugene, and so they actually cast Eugene because we used him as the design reference for Golden Line, which was awesome because it was one of those things where like as a designer, I don't know, I personally, but I know a lot of us do, like, we'll go and we'll look for an actor or a person or someone who, you know, kind of gives us a little bit more help on how to design or how to caricature in that, or gives the idea of the spirit or the personality. And that was one of those things where as soon as I saw Eugene, it was like, that's it, there's Golden Line right there. And it was like, here's my reference. And they're like, great, we'll cast him. Fuck yeah. And it's like, holy shit. And then it was, yeah, so it was really, that was really, really, really cool. And then, of course, we had to design his fucking hair because his hair is fucking amazing. Sorry, I'm not supposed to. I don't know if I'm supposed to cuss, but like his
No,
hair is absolutely amazing.
yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome that you were like, here's the inspo, and then like, oh yeah, we can get him like for the
Yeah,
actual movie.
it was awesome. It was so cool. And then finally getting to meet him too was like, oh, hi, I designed you. This is so fucking weird. But
Awesome.
he's great. He's the nicest guy on the planet.
Yeah. Okay, how about as a production designer on such an awesome film, what are the qualities of a director you want to work with?
I mean, so this movie was awesome. So like, both all the directors that we had on this, Patrick and Jeff, or sorry, not Jeff, Nick and Troy, like were great. And this is definitely that one of those spaces too where I would say Nick and Troy shined because as a production designer, you always hope you have someone who says, who supports, because sometimes everyone comes with their own visions and their own perspectives, because that's our job, right? It's a very subjective thing. As a production designer, you're always working for someone else's vision because you're a production designer, you're not the director, you're not the creator. um, but this was definitely an amazing space because Nick and Troy were uh, always supported. I mean, some of it was because when they came on, they saw what we were doing. They're like, "Oh my God, we want to work on that." And then they leaned so hard into all of the thinking, and were the most supportive, directors I have ever worked with. It was fantastic. Yeah, and I hope that all of my directors that I get to work with in the future are like that. And so far, it seems like they are. So yeah. Maybe I don't know.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. Um, oh, so here's a big one. Any advice for artists that are just starting to break into the industry, such as qualities you find in common in the great artists that you've worked with?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so again, I think thoughtfulness is at the top of my list. Um, uh, Again, like especially now being in this role, the there's always people who can draw and draw way better than you and paint way better than you, and there's so many of them, and they're amazing. Um, And, the ones that I'm blown away with are the ones that also come with just staggering reasons behind why they did it that way, right? And that is so hard to do. Like, as speaking from experience, it is just so hard to do. And so that is definitely a trait that like I would personally, and I work on every day, and I would say like is the thing that I find um, the most inspiring. And so practicing thinking, practicing, not being like the classic stuff of not being precious and all of that. But, even that one's a hard one because so much of us kind of pour all of ourselves into all of our work, which is why we do this and how we do this. That, being precious is challenging. But I think also just being kind of open is the other piece, and communication. Communication and listening is very, very challenging as well. And I think is it's funny. I didn't list any art skills. I listed non-art skills. That's I didn't even think of that. So, but yeah, no, I think like the thought that's where I think the drawing and the pencil mileage and all of that, that's muscle memory. That's practice. It's what lies behind it that I think is much more difficult to practice and much more important.
Thank you for that answer. That's something that I was hoping to ask you as well. So I'm glad that it showed up in the Q&A box. How about I'll roll two questions into one here. Can you talk about any upcoming projects you are working on, or what is one thing that you are working towards?
Oh God. Vacation? No. Um, no, I mean, so I actually don't know if I'm allowed to say anything or not about my current project. But I mean, for me, I think after NIMONA, looking at what comes next, I think is definitely, it's a personality defining space because I've spent so much time and effort in Nimona. It's like, oh, who the hell am I now? Okay, cool. Um, so like I think that the things that I've learned for that though is like it's you know finding a project that is kind of emotionally connect to is a big one. And I think that I mean, I feel like we're starting to see more and more and more of those. And so next, in the future, I hope to, as much as I can, contribute to more of that. And, hopefully with the industry calms down a little bit because I know there's been a lot of turmoil, but I think that's a space where it's just going to, with the technology advances and all of that, like it's just going to get bigger and broader and crazier and awesomer. Awesomer is a word, totally. Um, uh, that kind of cryptically answers your question.
No, that was great. Yes, I know we're getting a bit low on time here. Is there anything maybe you'd like to? Sorry, I've been like bombarding you with like
No,
questions.
please
Is there?
bombard with questions. Keep going. Keep going. We'll go until literally the line cuts out. That's fine. This has been so awesome, by the way. Thank you for having me. This has been
No,
super, super fun, and I'm really thankful.
no. We're thankful for you coming to see us. This has been awesome. Great. Yeah, then we'll keep going. Yeah. Oh, and everyone, I think there's just to let everyone know, I think there's another event with Katie from AI at 9 p.m. If anyone here wants to make it to that, it's about to going in depth on the 2D animation pipeline. You can find it on the AIA website Airtable. But yeah, if not, then yeah, we can keep going. Yeah. How about I'm trying to I'm like scanning the question box for the ones that we missed. Uh, how about sorry. Uh, Actually, I have a question. Was there anything on the film that like you like a design choice that you wanted to do but it didn't work out for any reason, or on the flip side, something you thought wasn't going to work out but it totally did? Anything
Um,
like
yeah, I mean, there were so many different iterations of this. I'm pulling something up in the background. There are so many different iterations of this film across the board, and some of them didn't work out, obviously, because there's always things like that. But I think my favorite one that I that didn't get to the screen was at some point there was a bunch of characters that we had designed um, for. a secret society of magical creatures, and they were all kind of like counter culture, but for with different magical magical things. So soothsayers and orcs and elves and dryads and shamans and all of this kind of crazy awesome like Kitsune, yeah, and Ifrits, and like this, I think, was one of those places where it's just like, oh damn, I wish we had gotten to have these characters in there, but maybe that's for the next one. So
Oh, interesting. That wasn't in the graphic novel, was it? Or
no, no, but there was, I mean, it was
yeah.
inspired by at some point they went down the road of like, because Blitzmeyer in the graphic novel
Right.
didn't make it into the original film, although she is the queen, because we designed her as the as we went all the way through with her as Blitzmeyer and actually had her as like she was this awesome like full tattoos, that were glowing and all of it anyway, like
Mhm.
but then she got cut because the story went a different direction, and so she was kind of a part of this other portion of the film that never made it to the light of day,
Oh,
like a
interesting.
lot of things.
Yeah. We got a lot of questions about like adapting the movie from the graphic novel because it is a bit different. Like I don't know if you have any other comments on like things you changed or like translating designs, things like that. Or
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge challenge because we wanted to stay as true to Nate's designs as possible because, you know, they were the ones that we all connected with so strongly. But obviously, like, in adaptation, everything, there's always a chance that it changes, and hopefully it changes in a way that doesn't take away from the original material. And, that was definitely a place where a lot of things changed. Goldeneye changed, Nimona changed, Ballister changed. All of the world got bigger. The world got uh, was different. The overall story changed in regards to in Nate's original comic, it was a lot more kind of like you were assigned a role, and this one is much more that society placed it upon you. So there was kind of a lot of things in the adaptation process, but I think the biggest thing that stood out over everything is even though stuff changed, the spirit that was underneath everything stayed consistent, and it's still there. And that's I think the process of adaptation. So hopefully we did a good job, but that's I think the goal is to make sure that you never lose sight of the spirit of that.
yeah, awesome. Yeah. Sorry, if you don't mind me asking, do you have the concept art for Blitzmeyer? I'm just really curious.
Yeah.
Because yeah.
It's really cool that I actually get to like, yeah, this is awesome that I get to show this. Yeah, so we went to let's see. So yeah, she had a bunch of tattoos everywhere. At some point we were like, oh, maybe they only show up when they glow. She was leaning very much into the kind of like, more bohemian space when we first started playing around with her. She was one of my favorites too.
This is so awesome. I was wondering like what she might have looked like if she had made it into the film. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much for showing us that.
yeah.
Um, yeah. Okay, let's see. Um, Here's one question. Do you have any fun stories about, I guess just any fun personal stories about working on the project? Says a lot of us are sad to have lost the opportunity to work with Blue Sky. Would love to hear about what it was like working there and things like that.
I mean, yeah, it was family. Yeah, like that was the first job I got out of school, and I was going to celebrate my 10-year anniversary a month after the closure. So
Oh,
yeah, it was an interesting experience. Um, but like, especially on this project, this was a hugely fun one because of how much everyone brought into it. So like I mentioned the Cape Day. right? Where we literally brought in capes and wore capes to try to figure out how the cape would move or what style of cape we want Ballister to wear. And this just so happened to be the same day that we took our company photo. So if you can find the company photo from that year, there's a section of people just wearing fucking capes. And there was, on this one we did like, you know, a trip to medieval times because that's definitely the place where they're gonna have the most true medieval reference ever on the planet. And then, we had a stage combat, and all of this, but I mean, honestly, I think it was the the space at Blue Sky and the people at Blue Sky, like they were the ones who made this project fun. And then when we took it over to the next space, even though we were in the digital sphere, DNEG definitely carried that torch along. So like I know there's a billion stories, but they're all strange, weird, and yeah. But oh, and
We
yes, and San Jose State. I went to San Jose State. Hi everyone, I went to San Jose State. Yeah.
all, we all love fun and weird here. So yeah. Um, okay. Let's see. Guys, does anyone have any last questions or anything like that that you want to get submitted or type them in the Q&A now? I think I missed one about, I guess someone wants to know more specifics around building the look using 3D tools. They said, I'm really curious how teams tell each other what to do if it's something there might not be people who can work with it, since the techniques are very new.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so that's actually a really good question. So this was this was a weird one because especially for this film, when we started this thing, this was kind of like before Spider-Verse had come out. Like obviously Spider-Verse was in development at the same time. Um, and so like it was still very early days on the kind of like hyper stylized look of picture and PR looks kind of thing. And so for this one, we obviously had the amazing talent that are so fucking way smarter than me, and we're doing the shader dev and figuring out how to shatter all of the actual tools that we had. I mean, they broke RenderMan, they broke Arnold, and when I say broke, I mean they literally broke the renderer. Like it stopped working, and they had to like change it and rip its guts out and put in new ones. I mean, they wrote special code to do crypto tools for how to do the specific things on, how to get the metal to do its specific thing, or how to handle the crease lines so that they would reinforce the expression but wouldn't actually create extra geometric detail. Um, and then because we always have to work on a budget, and because, back at Blue Sky, we were even more on budget, like we definitely uh, had to be really smart about it. And that's where thinking about, okay, what things can we build in up front to give us the most flexibility later, right? And that's where our journey took us to designing in special angles and planes and really finessing our models to take the light in a special way, which only would have happened if, only happened because we talked day one to the lighters and we were like, how can we do this? And, they gave in that and how we were going to do. We knew we needed to reinforce materials because we were going to replace some geometric detail with painted detail, but we didn't want it to feel painted on. And so that was another thing. It's like, well, where do we draw the line? How do we do things in that holistic space? And so like we did a bunch of tech stuff, and then we also did a bunch of just kind of breaking shit stuff in the very technical term, breaking shit stuff of how to do that. Yeah.
So,
I hope
okay,
that
yeah,
answered the question.
yeah, I think so. Um, oh, here's a cool question. Do you have any personal projects, like artistic personal projects that
I
you've
wish. I always start them and never finish them because I'm awful. This has been constant. So yeah, one day I'm sure I'll put out, I don't know, maybe half of one. Sure.
Ah, do you have do you have, could you maybe like tell us like a cool idea you have for a project?
Oh
Yeah.
God, I mean, I'm a psychopath who just keeps lists and lists and lists and lists of things. And so I have lists of them. I hate them immediately after I think them. It's like, oh, this is a great idea, and then literally 5 minutes later, it's like, no, I've seen that before. That's stupid. That's horrible. So there's obviously no imposter syndrome here. There's a lot of imposter syndrome here.
Well, you're literally an incredible artist though. Like, please, I'm sure your ideas are for personal projects are also amazing.
They're not. No, they're all
Well,
focused on other stuff right now, but thank you. No.
okay. Here's a bit of a like a hot topic question. How do you think AI is going to affect the animation industry?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm gonna be put on the spot by this one.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, uh, I mean, I, I will say this. I am very not up to date on a lot of things. I am horrible at staying up to date on things. I still need to watch Midsummer, and that's how far behind I am. Um, I mean, I would say like I think I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and it's an interesting thing because like there's obviously the ethics behind it, and especially as an artist, that's something that you know is a concern. But it's also, I think, something that is uh, a tool, and as long as it's used responsibly, can be used in an interesting way. I mean, I haven't played around with it to be honest with you, um, and I haven't tried any of it, but it seems very much from the kind of, as my friends mess around with it and play around with it, it seems very much like the thing that could very much be good for all of us artists in some ways, as long as it's used responsibly, um, to, help ideate, help explore. I mean, it's a crazy thing. I'm the worst person to ask this question. I,
No, it's okay.
but
I think we all just are just interested in your thoughts, even if
no
you
one
have.
should be interested. I mean, I thank you for
Oh,
having me on here, but no one should be interested in my
oh,
thoughts.
come on, gosh. Um, how about with your experience, what are some things that would help a new artist move towards and develop the skills for production design and character art? I guess this question asker is wondering, like, in terms of like art skills, since I mean, we all just saw your designs; they're amazing. So, yeah, like anything to help like new artists like learn about design or like how do you know like a good design?
I mean, pencil mileage, and I think definitely being very objectively honest about your work. It's something I do every day, and it's probably too much, but like it's definitely a thing that I think has, if you can step away and look at your work from an objective perspective, I think it helps very much. Identify where your growth areas are. Um, but like honestly, like fundamentals, like everything I think goes back to those, and like it could be since I'm San Jose State, it could be the fact that they're probably like hammered into me so hard that I can't think of anything but that. But it's also the thing that I'd say like across the board over my career, like that is falling back to those and strong fundamentals, color theory, light theory, anatomy, perspective is fucking hard. I think graphic design and costume design, as someone who, started in biz dev, it's something that I only very recently have realized how important they are at, everything. And it sounds crazy to say that it's like, oh, graphic design, NIMONA, yeah, duh, obviously. But that was also something where it's just like the more that you start thinking about the kind of thing, that the more it's just like, oh, yeah, that was a skill that I did not have and now have tried to focus on and has just changed, how I think about things. And so I think all of those fundamentals are super, super important for just practice, but then um, being objectively kind of self-aware and self-reflective about all your stuff and everything you do. Not everything you do, that's crazy, but like just everything you draw and paint, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, how about we talked a little bit earlier about this, but I think question asker is wondering like how did the studio like find all those people like around the world? Like how do studios like get people for remote work or like open positions for remote?
I have no idea. I would ask DNEG about that one. No, I mean, that was honestly, that was my first experience with a vendor studio because I started in a brick and mortar studio. Um, and so that was kind of a huge growing experience and learning experience. I don't know how they do the hiring, but it's amazing because it gave us access to the most incredible talent across the planet, which, when for a long time, when working in a brick and mortar, you're limited by location. And we're not limited by location anymore. So if you want to work with an amazing artist in Taiwan, you can go work with that amazing artist across the globe, and that's super awesome. Like, yeah, I'm I love that sphere. I think it's super, super cool, and I think it lends itself to so much more potential than just and mindsets and viewpoints and all of that stuff that you bring into that mix.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, I think this Zoom event is gonna go on till 9:30. So is there anything that maybe you'd like to talk about more or mention more before we wrap up? Or like
I'm
maybe how about sorry, I also wrote down some questions for the event. Um oh, let's see. Maybe what was something do you feel like you learned something? I mean, I'm sure you did, but like Uh, maybe what's one really important thing you like learned while working on the film, like in terms of like any like design or I know we probably talked about this a little bit already, um, but yeah, maybe what's like a super important thing you learned on the while working on the film, like either design wise or like just life wise or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I I think the easiest and the most important one is and this is, in some ways, this is, I think, the expected answer, but I think it goes back to the theme that we all tied everything to, which was that acceptance piece. Like, I think if you were to ask me, if I was to see myself from where I was in the beginning of this project to where I am now, I just have a different view of the world. Um, and I think that's something that, like, if it wasn't for this experience, I don't think I would have gotten to that point or gotten to that point as quickly. And it in because of that, I think it's the most world opening thing that working on this project has given me. Um, yeah.
Was there anything like particularly like a something you had to like overcome while working on the film, like something that went through like a bunch of iterations, or you weren't sure how to solve it, but something like that, or and how did you like overcome
I mean, everything. Everything was no. I mean, honestly, I think the biggest thing was obviously like the look. So much of the things was us kind of trying to figure it out as we go and as we went and try to build it in a way that kind of looked um, look to the future to try to figure out if we did this here, what it would do there. And so like I think that was a massive, massive challenge of kind of iteration, but also, from when we started this, it was a tough sell. That kind of a look, we got comments like, "Oh, it kind of looks cheap," or it doesn't feel, I feel why are you going for the 2D look? Why are you basing it? It doesn't feel big. It doesn't feel expansive, um, and it was a hard thing to convince, and I don't think we have to work hard at that now because there's so many projects out there that we've reached the point where literally if you can figure out what you want it to look like, you can make it look like that, which for a long time was a very hard sell for a full movie. Like we've all seen the little bits inside every movie that's just like, oh, it's a flashback, and they do it in some awesome style, right? And you're just like, God damn, why didn't they do the whole movie in that? That was amazing, right? And we've reached that point now where it's just like, yeah, do it for the whole movie. And, people are like, yeah, do it for the whole movie. We'll pay for that. And so that was, definitely that was, I think, probably one of the biggest challenges is so much of this project we had to fight and convince because, it was the thing that this project needed and deserved and was from the very beginning. And shit is gonna, yeah, again, like it's at this point, I feel like I'm a broken record. But again, even that kind of reinforces the theme of what this whole film was about, where it's just like it's the thing that this film was what it knew what it wanted to be from the very beginning, and then just had to convince everyone and prove to everyone what it was to see it for what it was. Um, and it was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Thank you for answering. Here's one last fun question, I guess. Could you name a major influence that you have that isn't art related? For example, stage plays, fashion, snowboarding, anything like hobbies. I'm also curious about like your art journey a bit. Like, I know you'd say you went to San Jose. Like, I don't know, like how did you, like what like drives you about art and why animation in the first place?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, also the inspiration, and I'll say a recent one is I recently have developed a fascination with fashion, and partly because of NIMONA, because for so long, I think as a designer, I was mistakenly under the idea that it's just like, oh, you draw a character and then their clothes on them. Okay, cool. But it is another example of how us as humans instantly read other humans, the fit of their clothes, what they wear, how they wear it, what they choose, how they choose to present themselves in that. And so that's definitely a place where I've learned and kind of been much more inspired by focusing on that space because it's fascinating. And then so that one, but the in regards to the journey, like I was that kid who always drew. There's boxes of Jurassic Park drawings that my mom and my dad have kept. Um, and then it kind of was always there, and I, didn't know what I was going to do when I was in high school looking for college, and I thought I was going to be a veterinarian for a while, and then I realized I had to go to school a lot for that, and I didn't want to do that, and so I randomly stumbled on San Jose when we were coming back from me and my dad were coming back from the San Francisco Jazz Festival, and we were like, "Oh yeah, look at this!" And then so we like randomly walked into the animation department, and saw some other work there, and was just like, "Oh my God, this is amazing!" And you can get healthcare, and you can get healthcare. Holy shit! Yeah, I'll do that. I get paid for this. I get paid for drawing. I mean, and that's one of those things where I think I count myself super lucky because I never have to grow up. I get to fucking make cartoons for a living, and that's amazing. And I think I never knew I was going to be in animation, and even when I was in the animation program, I thought I was going to be in. I was like, oh, I'm going to do games and live action, yeah. And then last semester, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try an animated project. And then I went to Blue Sky and it was like, well, okay, I guess we're in animation. And then it's 10 years later, no, like 13 years later. And I'm like, okay, I'm still in animation. And it's, again, it's like, it's that constantly inspiring space where it's just like, it is really the place where you can make everything you want and make art as poetry. And so that's, yeah, lame ending to that answer,
No,
but yeah.
no, that's an awesome one. I think that's really heartfelt. So thank you. Yeah, I guess everyone we're getting close to that time. So yeah, thank you so much, Aiden, for coming to speak to us today. Thank you
Thank
for
you
going.
for having me. This has been super, super fun. Thank you so
No,
much.
thank you for going over time as well. Yeah, as
Anytime.
because of yeah, because of that, I think we were able to answer pretty much all the questions. But you mentioned you were on a panel recently. Were you at Lightbox or just on?
I was at Gallery Nucleus actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah, that was also really fun. It was the first time I got to go to Gallery Nucleus, which is like,
yeah.
oh yeah, everyone is like Gallery Nucleus. It's like, oh, it's the first time I got to go to Gallery Nucleus. It was awesome.
Is that like is that a gallery where animation people hang out? Or?
Oh, yeah, it's an animation specific gallery in LA. And I think there's a, I
Oh,
mean, this is a plug. I'm sorry, this is a plug.
no, no, no.
And Jamie's like, oh God, you gotta. Why are you apologizing for that? But there's an NIMONA exhibit there. There's also, I think, so I briefly touched on everything, but we also released a digital art book, so it has the entire style guide and bunch of other stuff that I didn't show you today. So you ask for a real art book. Tell the internet to make a real art book and print it. I want one. Um, but
We all
yeah,
we don't want like a physical copy of the art book. So thank you so much. Yeah, totally plug away if you want. Like if you, I don't know, want to
that's all the
drop.
plugs I have. I don't have anything else.
Oh yeah, you wanna like everyone just part of the house rules like aren't really allowed to like give out any contact info or anything unless you want to drop your Instagram or anything like that.
Oh, I'm the fucking worst at social media. I haven't checked mine in years. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. But yeah, everyone, thank you for bearing with me as well. It's my first time moderating a panel or anything, so yeah,
Thank you,
I
Claudia.
just
It was
wanted to
great.
say. But yeah, thank you, Aiden, so much. Do you have any final comments or anything you want to share that you didn't get to share from the
I
film
don't,
or
I,
anything?
I don't think so. I think we did yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
Uh,
yeah, and thank you, Claudia. This was fantastic. You did a
yeah.
fantastic job. Yeah.
Oh, thank you guys. I had so much fun. Yeah, everyone, this webinar is being recorded. I believe it'll be up on the Asians Animation YouTube channel later. Just in case you want to like rewatch. I'm sure some of you are gonna want to rewatch and go look at all that awesome concept art we saw. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you, and thank you, Jamie, as well. Thank you for being here and helping us. Sorry for all the late start earlier. So yeah, thank you everyone, and
Thanks all.
have a good night. So yeah, goodbye everyone.